Welcome to another edition of Play It Through, and this time around it's Fester's Quest, brought to us by Sunsoft. Now, of course, they also did Blaster Master, the Batman games on the NES, as well as Gremlins 2. And with Sunsoft, you either like the games or you don't like the games. The music's always good, but the gameplay can be hit or miss. Fester's Quest seems to have a lot of hate that goes along with it. And while I can see why, and it's mainly for the weapons that you have to use throughout the game overall isn't too bad in terms of being completely unplayable. But the weapon problem, the upgradable weapon problem, is the main reason why I can see most people would have no interest of continuing this game after a few seconds. Now, here we go. This is the start of the game. You start off with only 2 health, unfortunately. Throughout this game, I will get a 3rd health bar, but I really don't see a need to get much more than that. And right off the bat, the first about 8, 9, 10 minutes or so of this video, I'm just going to be spend walking back and forth between this area. Now, I know it's going to get boring to actually be watching me do all this. I'm going to try to make it as interesting as possible, at least from what I'm saying. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be grabbing all the upgrades I'm going to need in terms of light bulbs, keys, as well as all the gun upgrades up to level 8. The gun goes up to, like I said, level 8, in which case you get the best, most powerful weapon in terms of regular enemies. And what I was saying, the reason why the gun stinks so bad is because you start off with a straight shot, which is fine. The second thing is another straight shot, longer. Then you get this wave kind of gun, this boomerang wave type of thing, that can completely miss the enemy, and which gets really annoying really quick. Also, the gun seemingly is too weak because you have enemies that'll somehow be able to just go right through your weapons and end up hitting you. And with only 2 hits, you have to be on guard the whole time. Now, when I've been grabbing light bulbs, you need a lot of light bulbs in order to be able to see everything in the sewers. They're not necessary if you play the game once or twice and you can memorize the sewer, or at least get a good generalization of where you have to go in the sewer. You really don't need the light bulbs because you can still see relatively well in the sewer. Right there, see that red gun thing? Let me talk about that right away. Another reason why people hate this game I can see is because that red gun thing, anytime you get the red gun, it degrades your gun. And you go back a level. So when you finally get it all the way up to level 8, you can end up backtracking, and then it can become absolutely worthless again. And sometimes, if you get backtracked, if the gun downgrades, you cannot seemingly get it back up sometimes. Now I just grabbed the next set of upgrades. Now it switched from the wave to this cannonball type of thing, and which is actually pretty powerful, and it moves in a circle. The problem with it is there are certain shots you're going to do where it'll just circle around the enemy completely, and they're not going to be able to get hit by it. Which, what's the point of it if it doesn't hit the enemy, right? So what I'm also going to be able to do is, once I get past this, you're going to see the reason why they upgrade the gun right off the bat as quickly as possible is so that you can get the best weapon, obviously, but the last weapon shoots straight, in which case it actually hits the enemy in front of you instead of moving around them or going above them or below them. You're also seeing I'm grabbing the blue whip upgrade. When you get the whip later in the game, which is basically, exactly what it sounds like, a whip weapon that you can use to just throw a straight shot with like a slow straight shot that does a good amount of damage. You can also hit enemies through walls. Overall though, if you have the best gun in the game, I don't find the whip that useful, and there's not too many times where you would need to hit an enemy through a wall, so I pretty much will not be using the whip. I'll get the upgrades throughout, and the whip can't be upgraded until you actually get it. I think that one makes sense. But that whole downgrading of the weapon is, throughout the game I'm going to try to make sure that I'm as careful as possible killing enemies. And if I see a red gun, I'd rather waste 10 or so seconds standing there waiting for it to fade if that's the only path I can go to. I'll wait for it to fade and go away before going down and absolutely downgrading my gun. There's just no use to it. So those things together is the main reasons why I think a lot of people don't like this game. And that's the problem with some of the Sunsoft games overall, is they just have some things about them that tick people off. The game may not be horrible, but there's things about it that just tick you off in the wrong places that make you just want to stop playing the game. They all, and almost every Sunsoft game has it. Whether or not it's like Journey to Silius, with the falling, jumping ability, the jumping, they did the same thing in Blaster Master. You fall a little too far off of an edge, you're instantly dead. As well as some of the gun issues in Blaster Master, which I think most people consider Blaster Master one of the best games they ever made, and I do too as well. I love that game. There is some gun issues through it, not being able to hit certain enemies in some of the top-down views, as well as the game overall is pretty confusing at certain parts without really a guide, in-game to really point you in the right direction. Okay, now we're up to gun level 7. Only one more level of gun upgrading to go before we actually can continue on and actually really start playing this game. And you're going to see once I get going in it, it's not too hard. What you're doing throughout the game is I think it looks like you're collecting pieces of a picture of that UFO from the opening. In which case, I guess that's like a map overall that tells you where the UFO is you can get picked up by it, to go onto the UFO, fight blow up the UFO ship and save the Earth from aliens. I think that's the premise. I know obviously you're stopping the aliens. I know that's the point of the game. I just don't know if you're collecting pictures of the spaceship or some kind of thing to call the spaceship, or for some real weird reason picking up pieces of the spaceship. That I'm not quite sure exactly what you're doing in terms of this. And see, even with level 7 gun, I'm having some trouble shooting certain enemies. Now, of course, these blob things that remind me exactly of something right out of Blaster Master. They don't even move, so there's a good chance through shooting a straight shot, I'll be able to take them out. But the frogs and other enemies that jump, move around, you have enemies that move and jump a lot worse than the frogs do. It's unnecessarily annoying, and it was a bad decision on Sunsoft's part to do that in this game. I always just found the gun hilarious looking. It looks like a bullhorn. It looks like a megaphone. That's what it looks like. Fester's just yelling into a megaphone the whole entire time, screaming out. It looks like the old wrestling manager Jimmy Hart with his giant megaphone yelling all the time. But now that we have the final gun, we have all the upgrades, we're actually going to continue on here. And first off, I'm going to come down this path and we're going to go into these two houses. This is the reason why I have the keys. You need a key to open every door, and right off the bat, Pugsley gives you TNT from that house. The TNT is a huge explosion, a huge damage weapon. It does obviously an explosion. Wednesday just gave us vice grips, and what they do is if an enemy hits me, certain enemies hit you and then you're slowed down. There's several NES games, video games in general, where you get hit by something like a sticky substance or something, you get stuck and you're moving slower. You use the vice grips. I have no idea how you really use the vice grips, but you use them whatever it means necessary in order to unstick yourself, I guess, so you actually can continue. Once I have those items, I've moved down into the sewer now. As you saw, I used a light bulb in order to illuminate the area so I actually can see. These slime things, I'm going to recommend using Turbo. I'm pretty much going to be using Turbo button through most of this game. I didn't up to this point, but I highly recommend Turbo in this game for the gun, especially on those slimes, because they just keep multiplying, and it seems the best way to take them out, that actually being able to actually kill them, is to use the Turbo button, just slamming them with a billion shots at one time to be able to take them out. So some of the sewers are a little confusing. Some of the sewers are made, it's like a giant maze anyway, but some of them actually, some twists and turns that lead you to dead ends. I've been able, by playing it a few times, I know pretty much where I have to go in order to get to the next set of stairs to get back to the overworld in order to get to the next house. Some of the sewers are pretty straightforward, in which case you don't really have to worry about backtracking or dead ends or anything like that. You'll eventually be able to. Only really at the beginning of the game is there multiple paths that can be taken that can lead you to dead ends throughout different stairs and different ways into the sewer overall.